Good morning. Okay, so today we're going to look at something a little different than the last day and a half, okay? We're going to kind of go back to the differential equation models because they're easier to work with, basically. And we're going to have a look at viral competition at multiple scales. Okay, so I'm going to start off with kind of a short piece of lecture for the first 15-20 minutes. And then there are a couple of problems for you guys to work on so that you'll see how the virus competition could work at the epidemic scale and also at the within-host scale in the standard virus dynamics model. Okay, and then probably just before or after tea, depending on how it's going, we'll talk about how to combine virus competition at the two scales. Okay. So viruses, biology is very multi-scale, right? Okay, so if you think about it, there's competition among different strains of the same virus, and that competition occurs at many different scales. Okay, so this, we just remind you that HIV, for example, is a global disease. So in a sense, the viruses are competing for hosts to infect. And if you have a virus which is more infectious and that has no other detrimental effects, then presumably that virus will spread more rapidly, and that virus will dominate the competition. It will beat the other viruses. Okay? But what is a virus? Well, we know a virus is a little collection of proteins and some nucleic acids, some DNA, RNA in the case of HIV. So a different virus strain basically means a different collection of RNA. Yeah? But that competition between things which are changing just at the scale of a few nanometers plays out across the whole globe in terms of the competition for hosts. Yeah? And just thinking about the difference in DNA, or RNA in this case, between viruses, okay, these are some phylogenetic trees. So phylogenetic trees, basically the distance between tips on the tree corresponds to, okay. So we have sort of an initial strain, and then it mutates out and it produces other strains, and they're arranged in a tree in this way. You get that? You've probably seen this before, right? Okay. So this is a single infected individual. Okay? So somewhere in the middle there is their founder strain, and these are the strains which have been detected branching out from it. And on the same scale, this is 23 people who are HIV positive between 1990, the blood was taken between 1990 and 1991 in one city, Amsterdam, which is in the Netherlands. And you can see there is this much viral diversity, in a sense, among 20 samples from 20 different patients. Okay? But you can see it looks quite likely that there is a single infection which kind of started that small epidemic within that city. Okay? And on the same scale again, do you see the scale bar every time? Same. This is HIV in the Democratic Republic of the Congo with 193 individuals sequenced in 1997. Okay, so you can see this is kind of, I don't know if it's country-wide, but it's region-wide diversity in HIV. Okay, so you see there are all these different strains, and they emerge rather rapidly. Even within a single individual, you can detect differences and build a tree for that individual. Yeah, and each one of those is competing for resources with all the others. So the resources that it's competing for are hosts. So it has to, this virus has to infect new hosts in order to spread, new people. But within each host, the viruses within a single person are also competing, right? What are they competing? What's the competition for within a host? T cells. They're competing for cells to infect. So even within a host, if a strain was to arise by mutation within one host, which was much more effective at getting into T cells, or when it got into T cells, it made more viruses, yeah, we would think that it would dominate the competition. Yeah? And we're going to see how these kinds of stories I'm saying play out within the mathematical model. Okay, so that's going to be sort of the first part of today, is to think about competition among different virus strains at different scales, within host and between host. Okay. There is one scale I didn't mention, right? Where else might viruses compete? Within host, between host, and there's one more. Within the T cells, yeah. So it's entirely possible to have two different strains of HIV infect the same T cell. And then in principle, those strains are competing, right, for cellular resources. And there has been some modeling of that. And in fact, this afternoon, the special lecturer, Narendra Dixit, from Indian Institute of Science, he's one of the people who could tell you more about that kind of thing. Okay, it's something I've heard about, I've read about, but I'm not by no means an expert on that side of things. So you should ask Narendra this afternoon about the possibilities of within-cell competition. Ask him over tea. Yeah. Okay. So, just to repeat what I just said, right? Viruses, and particularly HIV, mutate rapidly and then compete with their mutants, right? So you're a virus strain, some of your progeny have a mutation, so then you're basically setting up a competition between yourself and the newly created mutant. This is probably a pretty good description of a lot of evolutionary processes, okay? The competition occurs at many levels, so there are many resources that a virus needs, if you want to break it up by scale, yeah? And kind of the long-term goal of this sort of work is to build models of viral evolution that include effects from multiple scales. Okay, so in other words, to combine competition occurring at different scales in some sort of rational way. Okay. All right. Any questions? Okay, so let me just remind you of the basic model of virus dynamics. Okay, so if you remember, back before we worried about stochastic models, which I think are very interesting, and I'm glad I told you about them, but back before that, we talked about the basic model of virus dynamics. Okay, so we have T cells, or target cells, which become infected to produce T stars, and then the T stars produce viruses which can go back and complete the cycle of infection, and we have some background source of T cells, so some background source lambda of T cells, and natural death of uninfected T cells as well. Okay, and I've showed you all of these pictures before at some point or another, right? So this is fitting individual patients. This is a picture of how the model results might look if I pick some arbitrary parameters. A big drop in T cells, which partially recovers. You get an initial spike of virus, which then goes down to some set point. Yeah. You'll notice, I think in one of the pictures I showed you before, I must have chosen the parameters so that the infected steady state was a spiral point, right? Because I had some oscillations around here. But this time I must have picked parameters so it wasn't a spiral point. Just kind of interesting. Okay, so the question is, in this model, how can we talk about virus competition? Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to write on the board some equations which would be a starting point within this model to look at competition for resources within host. Okay, so the background of T cells kind of starts the same. So we're starting off with a background population of T cells which can be infected. Okay, and then the key difference is we're not just going to have one kind of virus, we're going to have two kinds of virus. You can't have a competition with only one kind of virus. Yeah? So let's consider two viruses and call them V1 and V2. So when a V1 infects a T cell, it's going to make a T1 star, and when a V2 infects a T cell, it's going to make a T2 star. So we would have something like minus K1 V1T, K1 V1T minus K2 V2T. Okay? So we see that we have infections by V1 and by V2. So we have two strains. Okay, so now we have infected cells arising from those infection events. And those infected cells will die at some rate μ1. And now I'm going to write the same equation for T star 2. and then the T1 stars make V1s, and the T2 stars make V2s. There's my model. So now we can think what will happen in this system. Yeah, we can ask ourselves a question: which one will win? And what do I mean by win? I mean outcompete the other one and become the resident strain. The other one goes to zero. Okay. So what is the condition for one of these viruses to win? So I'll tell you what the condition is, and then you'll have a little bit of work on well, actually not on this model. I'll just tell you for this one. There'll be a little bit of work on another model. The quantity, which I call here, this is not the same row from yesterday. Okay, it's a different row. Okay, this quantity rho, which is equal to Kp over mu c, that determines who wins the competition. Okay, so if we write down rho 1 equals K1 P1 over mu1 C1, and rho 2 equals K2 rho 2 over mu2 C2, then whichever one of these is bigger wins. And this kind of makes sense. K and P are good things for the virus. If you have a high K, then you infect quicker. If you have a high P, you make more viruses. If you have, on the other hand, mu and C are bad things. If you have a high mu or a high C, then you get cleared more quickly. Yeah? Yeah. So these things are, it's simply a ratio of what's good over what's bad. Okay? And the one that has a higher value of this ratio, it gets to be the winner. Okay? And we call that competitive exclusion. Okay? We call this competitive exclusion. So one of the viruses will competitively exclude the other one. It prevents it from being able to live. Okay. All right, I'm actually going to skip over a few slides, so don't look for a minute. Okay. Okay, all right. So now let's have a look at the between host model. Okay, so we need an epidemic model as well. So we're going to look at competition at the between host scale. So the simplest epidemic model you can write down really has two classes of people: susceptible people and infected people. Okay, so if we have a chronic infection, this works great, yeah, because the people, once you become infected, you remain infected sort of indefinitely. Okay, in the case of HCV, Hep C now, you can get treated, but actually when I made this slide, the treatment wasn't around yet, so this was pretty accurate. So if you get infected with HIV, you can have a very long-lived infection for the rest of your life. Okay, and what we can do is we can break the hosts down, so at the epidemic scale, into susceptible people and infected people. So again, so we can take this basic model that susceptible hosts are coming into the community at rate B, okay, and their natural death rate delta, okay, and then they become infected upon contact with an infectious person. This is the absolute simplest model, okay? So quite often you'll see here a division by S plus I. I'm even ignoring that, okay? This is just the simplest possible model here, okay? So this beta here is the transmissibility of the virus, okay? So people are now in the infected class once they get infected, the I's, and they're joining at this rate, and then they have some additional mortality due to the infection. So in the case of HIV, this would be, progression to AIDS and death would be captured by this rate alpha. Okay? All right, so this is the simplest possible epidemic model that I can think of. But again, I could imagine what would happen if I had two strains of the infection. So if I had one virus and then I had another virus. Okay? So just by analogy with what I just did, I could write down the equations for the epidemic model. So this would be B minus delta S minus beta 1 S I1 minus beta 2 S I2 di1. So let's just think for a second. What is an I1? It's a person infected with strain 1. Okay? di1 dt equals to beta 1 s I1 minus alpha 1 plus delta I, and di2 dt equals to beta 1, beta 2 s I2 minus alpha 2 plus delta I. Oh, that should be 1, that should be 2. Just check. Yeah. Okay, so again, we have competition here, right? And again, there's a quantity which determines which virus is stronger and will exclude the other virus. Okay, and what is that quantity? Beta divided by alpha. Very good. Okay, and in this case, we can call, well, call it on the next slide. We can call this R, and it's beta divided by alpha plus delta. Yeah, R equals beta divided by alpha plus delta. Okay, is the measure. This is not the R naught. Okay, this is the R naught divided by the susceptible population size. Okay, so I just call it R. And again, if you calculate R1 for the first virus and R2 in the same kind of way, so we have beta 1 over alpha 1. Okay, and again, the virus which has the higher value of this will dominate the competition. Okay, and this leads to, okay, does it make sense? So to be a good virus, which from their point of view, from our point of view, that makes it a bad virus. Okay, so to be a good virus, to be good at your job as a virus, yeah, you want to be highly transmissive and minimally virulent. So virulence is the term for what being sick, what the virus making you sick, yeah? Because virulent and killing you specifically. So what is the optimal virus? Tell me, what will the optimal virus look like? Is it for me? Okay. Okay.
Very transmissive with no pathological effects.
Yeah. So the best virus that can be is highly transmissive and completely non-harmful. Okay. So can anyone tell me a disease which is very transmissible and completely non-harmful? Okay. Tuberculosis? No, that's harmful. Okay. You can keep your tuberculosis, man. Sorry, what did you say? Common cold. Common cold, yeah, common cold is actually reasonable. I think some people do die from the common cold, but it's not so unreasonable. Any examples? Whooping cough? That will kill some kids in the absence of vaccination. Sorry? Smallpox? What are you talking about? Yeah, it's highly transmissible, but actually it's not that highly transmissible. It's intermediate transmissibility, but it's quite bad for you on the whole. I think I won't have that. There are some infections. So for example, there's an infection called Epstein-Barr virus, which in the West, and I don't know how it is in India, in the West seems to have minimal pathological effects. In Africa, in resource-limited settings, the kids seem to get sick from Epstein-Barr virus. But generally speaking, apparently 80% of people in Canada, say, will have Epstein-Barr virus, like me, probably. It lives in your tonsils. You spread it by kissing. Typically, you get it when you're a teenager. Don't know why. Or also, mother can spread it to child. Mother can pass to child as well. In the West, there seem to be minimal effects. So one of my grad students is working on Epstein-Barr virus in a lab. And one of the problems they have is if they want to study humans, it's very difficult to find a negative control because 4 out of 5 people are infected with it. So, and the other thing that makes it even more difficult is you're typically not really, it's very hard to detect who's infected and who isn't. But once you're infected, you remain infected for your whole life. okay? So Epstein-Barr virus would be a good example. People have also modeled, for example, the spread of information in this way. So you could have, these could be people that don't know, say, a rumor or a story or something, and the rumor is spread, and then there are people that are then spreading the rumor to others, you know? And rumors obviously can be kind of harmful, but they probably don't kill you on the whole, right? So you could also model that in a similar kind of way. That's not really an infection. Okay. All right, but then there's a question, right? Okay, so if the best viruses, if the best viruses are highly transmissible and minimally virulent, then why do we have virulent viruses? There's a bit of a paradox here, right? Why do we have viruses that make you sick and kill some people, right? People die of the flu every year. So why do we have virulence? It seems like the viruses are making a very bad choice, right? What the virus should try to do is infect you, remain infectious for as long as possible, and then just leave you alone.
It's a host-rich environment, and it doesn't matter so much.
That's actually a very good point. So if there's lots of hosts around, right? So if there's lots of people around who haven't had the disease yet, there can be a benefit to spreading rapidly. But spreading rapidly typically means using host resources. So in order to spread, if you require host resources in order to spread, then the virus is kind of trapped. It has to make you sick because it has to use your resources in order to reproduce itself and spread. So that's one thing.
Making competition for the infected viruses.
Yeah, that's an interesting idea, right? So just related to that is the idea of a transmissible vaccine. So one of the problems with vaccination, right, is I have to come around and give everyone a shot. Yeah, it takes a lot of time. If I could just give him the vaccine and it could be transmissible and pass among you. So there have been theoretical studies of transmissible vaccines, but it's sort of hard to imagine a drug company wanting to take a chance on this, right? Because unintended consequences could be severe. Yeah. Okay. There are some theories about the reason why viruses are virulent. Okay. So one theory, I'll just quickly tell you about these. One theory is that virulent diseases are in the wrong host. So can someone give an example of this? A disease which is bad for people, but maybe it didn't evolve in people. Ebola, great example. Ebola, I believe, is endemic in bats.
I'm not sure. I don't think it's fully known.
I'm not sure it's entirely known. I'm just going to skip to a slightly different example, which is rabies. Rabies, as far as I know, doesn't make bats particularly sick. But if it goes into people, we know rabies is very dangerous, right? So this is the viruses are in the wrong host. Yeah. So it's not optimized for low virulence in people. What about HIV? What do you think about that? Is that in the right host or the wrong host? It's HIV, but how long has it been in people? Like 100 years probably, yeah. So it is possible that if we allowed the HIV epidemic to unfold without treating people and without trying to vaccinate and do all these things, it's possible that HIV would evolve to become less dangerous to people. Okay, and the reason for that would be an HIV virus which did not cause an onset of AIDS, but was still transmissible, would have a longer transmissive lifetime. Yeah, it could be transmitted over the host's whole lifetime rather than just over a short period of 5 or 10 years. Yeah. Okay. So some people argue that the whole reason that we really have virulence is due to host mismatch effects. This even would apply maybe to influenza. Influenza spends a lot of its time, a lot of influenza viruses come out of birds or out of pigs or other things, right? And if they're optimized for the bird population, maybe they don't hurt the people so much. Okay. The second one is short-sighted evolution, okay? And the concept here is that you have a host, which is a set of resources, Okay, so think of me as a set of resources, right? And the virus comes in, and because the viruses are competing to exploit my resources, they accidentally compete too fiercely, okay? And they really start tearing down the host resources, right? Because any virus that can get a survival, that can outcompete within the host is probably using more resources. So there's this kind of fight to use the host resources and reduce the host resources as low as possible, yeah? So each a virus which can exploit 92% of my T cells will do better than a virus which can exploit 85% of my T cells, and it will tend to outcompete it. But from my point of view, this is very bad, because now I have less T cells, yeah? So there's this concept of short-sighted evolution. In other words, sort of developing to optimize host exploitation at the within-host level, yeah? Yeah. So this is a point, right? At the within-host level, we can look at this in the mathematical model. The within-host level, these viruses with high values of rho will also be the viruses which drive the T cell population as low as possible. Okay? So essentially, this is the food for the virus, if you like. That's the input there, right? And the virus's jobs, the viruses that can optimally exploit that input will be the ones that will do best. So in other words, they will drive the host resources lower and lower and lower. Okay? That make sense? Yeah. Oh, just to comment, sorry, I just wanted to go back to the first bullet point. There's also that virulent diseases can be sort of in the wrong tissue. So there's this notion that meningitis, which is a swelling of the tissues around the brain, right? Bacterial meningitis, most adults, I believe, or many adults have the same bacteria for meningitis in the throat, but it doesn't get into this area of your head, okay? And in the event that the meningitis bacteria goes into the area around your brain, it's sort of in the wrong environment, and it's used to competing in your throat. It gets into and not causing any trouble, right? I'm just carrying meningitis around with me. Doesn't cause me any problems. But if it goes into your brain, into the tissues around your brain, it may still be acting as if it was in your throat and sort of leading to inflammation and all kinds of problems like that. Okay. All right. And then the third thing I want to talk about is a trade-off between transmission and virulence, okay? So it may be that transmission requires a degree of virulence. Okay, because let's think about influenza. For me to transmit, right, the host what has to happen for me to transmit the influenza? Sorry? I have to sneeze or cough. What makes you sneeze or cough? Irritation, right? Irritation, inflammation, okay? So I have to cough, right? So that sort of suggests that the virus kind of needs to make me sick, a little bit, at least, right? And then the other thing is, when I'm coughing, the virus has to come out in big quantities, enough that it could possibly infect one of you guys. Don't worry, you're safe today. I'm feeling pretty healthy today. All right? But the virus has to come out in big quantities. So that means the virus needs to make a high dose of virus in your lungs. And how's it going to make a high dose of virus? By taking resources, yeah? By taking resources, infecting cells, making the cells sick, making the cells, right, into little factories to make virus. So to get a high viral load, and that then leads to inflammation and coughing and generally feeling pretty bad, yeah, that's all just incidental to the virus's main goal now of trying to get to another person, yeah? Yeah. Okay, it doesn't make it, there's no decision making going on. It's purely evolutionary, yeah? So when I talk about the virus wants to, or the virus should, what I mean is natural selection will probably favor viruses to do this, and I'm kind of being a little bit lazy in my language, okay? We can all agree on that natural selection. You guys are good with this, right? Yeah, I don't mean you agree with it. I mean you all understand, you know what I'm talking about, right? Natural selection, yeah? Okay, yeah. So, I mean, it depends. It depends on the virus. Some viruses are much more stable than others, yeah? And it also depends by how much evolution are you talking about. So every single HIV that is made in a person's body is probably one base pair different from the previous one, because the error rate for HIV is quite high. Okay, so HIV has about 10,000 base pairs or something. 10,000 base pairs in its RNA. And then if you look in the next descendant, so one passage through a cell, one of them typically has changed. Okay, that's the back of the envelope estimate. Yeah, some viruses are more stable. Yeah, there's variability among viruses. Yeah. All right. So transmission virulence trade-offs can be visualized by looking at these axes. Okay. So if we imagine a universe of viruses which are characterized by their virulence alpha and their transmission beta. Okay. So this is these are level curves of R. Okay, so these black lines are level curves of R, and this arrow is indicating where the viruses want to be. So if you're a virus, you want to be up here. Okay? However, it could be that in order to achieve a high transmissibility, you're forced to be somewhat virulent because you have to make the host cough. You have to produce lots of viruses to be transmissive. Yeah? In which case, you can imagine there might be some kind of line due to the within-host effects, and the virus is constrained to lie on this line. So if the virus tries to increase its transmissibility above a certain amount, then the virulence starts to get too high and it actually costs the virus, okay? And if the virus is constrained to lie on this curve, which we call a trade-off curve, because there's a trade between between high transmission and high virulence, and low virulence. You can't have both at the same time. Then we want to optimize around about here somewhere, yeah? So this is actually the best the virus can do. So looking at these level curves of R, these are equal values of R, and so there's an R here, which is about so the best the virus can do is somewhere around here, okay? Does that make sense? So this is one way of visualizing kind of decisions in inverted commas, because it's evolutionary, that the virus has to make between different strategies. Yep, lysis, lysogeny, yeah.
Which is interesting because they're then using the host sensory apparatus to do some kind of quorum sensing.
Yeah, so phage are what we call viruses that infect bacteria. And there are phages that can make a decision, as it were, when they go into a bacterium. So when they go into a new bacterial host, they can choose either to go dormant and remain in the bacterium for a period of time, or they can basically make the bacterium very infectious and make lots of new phages to go out and look for new bacteria. Okay, so, and they make that decision based on how many bacteria they think are around. And that I think the way they get the information for how many bacteria are around is by the bacteria themselves sensing the proximity of other bacteria. So yeah, viruses can be clever. Now, an extreme example of this is large-scale parasites like trypanosomes and malaria and things like this. They can have extremely complex behavior and can respond to the host in all kinds of different ways. So let's just say we're not modeling any of that. Is that okay? Yeah. All right. Okay. So we have this fitness landscape in the SI model. All right. So before we talk about any more trade-offs and such things, okay, I want to give you guys some problems to work on, okay? These are differential equation type problems to work on, okay? So why don't you we'll take a break for, I don't know, maybe this will take until tea, I'm not sure, okay? For you to work on a couple of problems relating to basically these two sets of equations here and trying to understand maybe what can go on there. And then in part 2 of this lecture, I'll talk about how we resolve the fact that viruses can compete within host and between host, and some thoughts we had about this. Okay? Does that sound reasonable? Okay.